Welcome to Be Honest podcast with Dr. Yana and Dr. Sherry, where we hold honest conversations about life, relationships, challenges, and everything in between, with unfiltered discussions with real people offering their authentic stories, experiences, and perspectives. No topic is off limits and no story is too small. Join us on United Public Radio Network 107.7 FM. Gentlemen, we just decided to play music for you at the very beginning. What is going on? Looks like the computer system today, technology is too sensitive. Look at that, too sensitive. We're gonna accuse it of being too sensitive, right?
It's
That
being
is
deceitful.
crazy. It's being so deceitful, manipulative and everything. Well, thank you for joining us today on United Public Radio Network 107.7 FM. You are here with us with the fabulous Dr. Sherry and Dr. Yana on Be Honest podcast. Thank you for joining us today. We are so happy that you're here, and we would like to ask you to email us your stories about lying, because lying is something that we are going to disseminate today. We will talk about it. So we're asking you to go to our website, which you can see underneath right here, behonestpodcast.com, and email us your stories. We will look at them, we'll read each and every one of them, and the most interesting ones, the most, I guess, the provocative ones will appear on our show. Let's talk about it, people. Let's talk about lying. Huh, Dr. Sherry? Let's talk about it.
Right. Let's uncover the secrets behind deciphering lies and explore the intricate world of deceit.
Exactly. So, ladies and gentlemen, have you ever wondered what goes on in the mind of a liar? How can we tell when someone is lying? Is it the nervous switches? Oh my goodness. The subtle shift in tone? Or the carefully constructed story? Today, we will unravel the mystery of deception and uncover the telltale signs of dishonesty. So, what do we know about lying? Lying is a ubiquitous aspect of our human behavior, but people often resorting to deception for various reasons, ranging from self-preservation to manipulation. Understanding the intricate workings of the mind of a liar offers insight into the motivations, cognitive processes, and emotional complexities underlying this behavior. So, Dr. Sherry, how many times a day do you think we hear lies?
Hear them?
Yeah,
Oh, many, I'm sure. 30,
many.
40, 100?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. Well, from hundreds, exactly from 10 to 200s, that's the research suggests. But how many times do we lie? We lie all the time. And while we can, of course, say that, oh, lying is so bad, nevertheless, we all do engage in lying.
Yes. Well, worst of all deceptions is self deception. Plato.
Yes, that's
Mhm.
right. And I would say that even the most greatest people in history lied, right? Those people that we consider the icons of honesty, the icons of our world, they are also engaged in lying, and that is normal. I think that the deception was created with the inception of humanity. What do you think?
Well, I think it's a self preservation, right? So
That's right.
people,
Yeah.
why do we lie? oftentimes to protect ourselves, gain advantage, manipulate other people. There's always a reason for it. It's not like it just simply comes out. It's usually to protect the other person or to protect ourselves. And we think we're protecting another person when we're lying. However, we're truly not protecting anybody. We're trying to protect ourselves. You can't protect anyone from deceit. Otherwise, you wouldn't lie.
That's right, exactly. Now, I believe that even us, even the most honest people, they also engage in lying. So, what are the most interesting cases of the world that we know that people lie? What comes to mind is the story of Ferdinand Waldo de Mara, known as the Great Impostor. Dimar was a con artist, an imposter who assumed numerous false identities throughout his life. He impersonated various professionals, including a surgeon, a prison warden, and a monk. Imagine that, deceiving people with his fabricated credentials and stories.
So, some false identities.
Oh, yeah, false identities. I've always been fascinated by people who were able to lie or engage in this kind of deceitful, manipulative behaviors without having conscious conscience, their conscious to react to it in ways that would be probably shameful to them, right? But in fact, it is not. Not all of us feel shame when we lie. So with people like that, or for example, Frank Abagnale, like Catch Me If You Can. Remember the story in the 60s? Do you remember that there's a movie with Leonardo DiCaprio?
I do recall the movie, but it's not coming to memory.
Yeah, that's such a fantastic story, and I'm so glad that they made a movie out of it. He was a notorious con artist, also an imposter, just like Ferdinand Waldo de Mara, who successfully posed as airline pilot, doctor, a lawyer, among other roles. Yeah, his ability to charm and manipulate others allowed him to carry out elaborate schemes of deception and fraud.
Yeah,
So,
or Bernie Madoff, the people who commit these Ponzi schemes. That's a big one, out of
yes,
billions of dollars.
billions of dollars, but how is it possible to even detect the lie? When people possess such incredible charm, I think it would make it much more difficult to even believe that the person is lying. In fact, there are psychological studies that state that the people who look uh, beautiful, uh, when they're perceived as more beautiful, right, and who are smooth talkers and charmers, they are perceived as being truthful. Isn't that interesting?
It's very interesting. But you also have on the other side of the coin there, you have people who are very vulnerable to such schemas and such charms. They're vulnerable to, or they're empathetic. So people like that, often the Machiavellian, narcissistic, psychopathic, the triad of dark psychology, we could call that. Those types of people often seek out vulnerable people who are generally people who are high on empathy. So when you get someone who's high empathy, they usually have a lot of hope in someone. They trust someone until proven otherwise. So it's like a marriage made in hell, basically.
True. And the interesting thing is that we are wired as human beings to save people, right? To lend out the helping hand, to understand a person, to be there when a person needs help. So as human beings, we're wired for that. And unfortunately, those con artists, they do use it for their own advantage.
Yeah, and you would literally have to study body language, I would say, the verbal cues, nonverbal cues, to really be able to decipher if someone's telling the truth with regard to not knowing someone, like someone who's coming to you, especially like, for instance, in a Ponzi scheme, oftentimes they're referred by a friend. It's a trusted friend who's referred someone. So you're assuming, making an assumption that your friend has the best interest, and you go with that person and make a contribution or investment per se, right? So
Absolutely. And that when we hear that from the trusted person, we're more likely to engage in the deceitful behavior. Of course, that even sometimes when we don't know that it is, in fact, a deceitful behavior. A lot of the times when we don't recognize the signs of someone lying, we can fall prey into their schemes, into the lying, into uh, even fabrication of facts, and we're hurt by that, and other people are hurt by that. So even the best of us, we can actually inadvertently hurt ourselves and people around us.
Hmm.
If you remember the woman at the beginning of the 20th century, her name was Anna Anderson. She claimed to be Grand Duchess Anastasia Nikolaevna, the youngest daughter of Tsar Nikolai II, the Nicholas II, who was believed to have been killed along with her family during the Russian Revolution. So Anderson's claims were the subject of much controversy and debate, with some believing her to be an impostor and others convinced of her authenticity. Nevertheless, we can talk about probably some psychological, uh, mental disorder here or disorders, because people who would want to adopt someone else's identity are already not healthy emotionally, psychologically, and it's just we want to believe a fairy tale, and somehow we grew up on those uh, fairy tales as the princesses and the tsarevnas and tsars and kings, and those stories fascinate us. Just like in England, people fight for the king. um, why would they fight for the king? Right? It's been like from a long time ago. Probably the same as to protect our country, we will fight for our president.
Pretty much. Or I
Yeah,
mean, you really didn't have a choice. That was your choice then. You could either do that or you could go underground somewhere and, you know, start your own revolution or attempt to. But back then, you were just that was the way it was. The king was the king
the king was the
or the
king.
queen. You know, that's who you
Exactly.
abide. That was kind of the god back then. But when the church
Yeah,
came into play, then they also were heavily influenced by the church. That's a
true.
whole nother show there.
That's a whole another show. That's true. And speaking of queens and queenhood, queendoms, today is in fact the International Women's Day. So Dr. Sherry and I congratulate every woman out there uh, who have gone through a lot. As women, we've gone through a lot in our lives, right? And I'm not minimizing the experiences of the guys and men here, but today we celebrate us. And of course, at the beginning of the history of the Women's Day, right? It's we fought for our rights so vehemently, and the rights that they in fact were taken from us centuries ago, uh, millennia ago, right? So
Which in and of itself was a type of a lie,
type
right?
of a lie, exactly, because at the time, the first society was a female society. And so interesting that if we look back, we see all of those goddesses and the goddesses cults that were worshipped for hundreds of years. And then after that, we had the patriarchy that came and the guys who took the power from our hands, like, yay, we're gonna rule the earth. And they made women submissive, right? They took away the rights and everything like that. So over the centuries, we've fought for our rights, and I think that rightfully so, we are coming to the times when we can claim it back. But I believe that we should not be doing that forcefully. It should be done gracefully. A lot of women probably will disagree with me, especially the feminist movements, that we cannot take our power back gracefully. Who's going to give it back to us, right? However, it can be done gracefully. And if we look at the greatest queens in history, they never done anything by power. they would always use the feminine mind, the intricacies of feminine mind, in order to achieve things peacefully. Although I cannot say the same with the interesting events happening in Europe at this time when the governing bodies are given to the hands of women. And there is a lot of uh, chaos created by that. So I don't understand what is happening there. Um,
I think when
what
we
is
talk about governments and we just start talking about corruption in general. So I mean,
corruption, power, right? And that's what
greed,
happens.
deception, and yeah, it's anytime there's power there, everything that falls under power just is kind of a domino effect to get to that power.
Absolutely. So that's probably is the case because before we talk about queens, and queens would have a lot of advisors, and they would be able to make some uh, good choices for their society and be able to lead the society in a certain direction.
Yeah,
So
thankfully
now,
we've kind of moved away from that kind of thing because I'm definitely not on board to be kings and queens and just by a family who keeps producing people who are heirs that run countries. And so again, people can also damn me for my words today, but I'm just going to say that I'm grateful that we don't have that type of royal influence. We can just allow ourselves to be queens on Happy International Day, and
that's right.
you
That's
know,
exactly. That's true. So let's celebrate ourselves today as beautiful, fantastic women that deserve the admiration and the day off. Unfortunately, today is not the non-working day, right? We can't take a day off work, other, but we can do something nice to ourselves, and hopefully that our men, our loved ones, will recognize it. But somehow it is not really in the celebration in the West. It is the European celebration somehow, but in the West, it is more of the feminist celebration. However, in the rest of the world, the March 8th is a celebration of femininity, of women, not necessarily mothers
I think
or
March is
daughters.
Women's Month, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I think March is celebrated as a Woman's Month.
Well, you know what? This is fantastic. Let's just break into the ears of our loved ones, our guys who just need to treat us especially with kindness, special kindness and reverence during this month. So,
Women should be
congratulations to
celebrated every day. Men
everybody.
should be celebrated every day. I think the planet needs both of them. I think that if we could find a beautiful balance in this world, it would be phenomenal. But I think we're far from that because of all the deception per se. We can throw that out there. We have to learn to separate fact from fiction, and I think the world is far from it. But we can keep promoting it.
That's right.
You know?
Yes.
I mean, look
Well,
at what's
back
happening
to
on the
deception.
like catfishes, catfish, right? People who get catfished online, scammed out of thousands of dollars, and just things like that. It's you speak diving into the mind of the liar. That's it's so it's really dark in there.
Well, how many you like? That's it. I'm done. I'm done. Let's dive to the mind of the liar.
Let's illuminate the
Can I leave
deception.
the room, Dr. Sherry? Can I leave the room?
Mic drop,
Mic
right?
drop. Yeah. So, what kind of liars do we have there, Dr. Sherry? I think we have
Yeah,
something is called like a white lie. Do you
white
think it
lies
is
are like the
justified?
minimum. Well, white lies, also called, didn't you call them, last week called it a, what's another term for a white lie? Not a small lie, but you had a different term for it.
Mm.
Um, I liked it though. I'll try to remember it. Well, there's like compulsive liars, there's what is it? Pathological liars, manipulators, impulsive liars. There's cons. There's frauds,
Freud's. Freud
Freuds,
was maybe the
Freudian slip.
ultimate liar, telling us that everything depends on the phallus, right? On our sexual desires. So maybe that was the biggest lie of the century. Yes,
Yeah.
there are occasional liars as well. So, if a white lie would be something to protect the feelings of others, there are occasional liars that would lie to make themselves look good or to get to have their needs met. Right? They're habitual liars, which probably should be distinguished from pathological liars. With a habitual liar, has fallen into the habit of lying because it feels easier and more convenient than telling the truth, because telling the truth can entail consequences, and sometimes unpleasant consequences. And of course, that we have prolific liars who lie frequently, but do not experience as much distress about lying or perceive as much danger as pathological liars, right? So we liar is a liar. So
Liar,
let's
liar,
just put
pants
it
on fire.
pants on fire. That's right. So how do we detect the lie? You mentioned here the situation with online schemes, right?
Yeah,
So
not being able to see someone. Maybe you can't see their verbal or nonverbal cues in that regard. So you'd have to look for inconsistencies, ambiguous language.
yeah, well, ambiguous lie. This is if it is online, for example, right, and the information is written. It's a whole another story of how to decipher those lies. We have to know the baseline. We have to educate ourselves. We have to have enough of a critical factor at play here in order not to fall for these lies, right? But unfortunately, with those with online lies, it is my understanding that we don't have the baseline. We don't know the person who is lying, and even in online dating, it is absolutely difficult to determine if anyone is lying through text
It is,
because
but I
you don't
mean,
know that person yet.
yeah, I think there's another quote out there, and it's like it says, "We are never deceived; we deceive ourselves." So if you're in a
Well,
really
how's
dark,
that?
well, if you're in a really dark place in your life and you're vulnerable and you're lonely and you're eating up the attention from somebody, then you're not allowing yourself to truly see the signs. There's always signs that someone's lying to us. We have to be willing to see it. And to I think we just because we deceive ourselves into believing that this person on the other end of that computer is they really like me and they love me, but oh, they won't FaceTime me. They won't send me a video chat or something like that. It's like just stuff like that. And some people just continue to feed into something, even though there's that inconsistency there. That is a self deception. You're deceiving yourself into believing something that is on telling you you're going against your gut, basically.
Absolutely. We believe those lies. That is a form of self deception. And while our entire podcast is about being honest, it does not mean being stupid, right? And believing everybody else's lies. However, as human beings, we want to look at the person and believe them. And a lot of the times we're being manipulated into something that we don't want to be, right? We don't want to be in those situations. And that is so easy to do. And our human tendency is not to believe the truth, in fact. We are eager to believe the lie. And here we have to be so honest with ourselves because seeking external validation can just absolutely cloud our minds, and we can fall prey into those manipulative schemes and techniques, right? So just like you rightfully mentioned, uh, there are so many schemes online, and even in online dating, the people can tell you that, oh, you're the most beautiful woman or a man on earth, right? That I'm so happy that I've met you.
But can you please send me $25,000?
Exactly. Exactly. I cannot tell you that, well, this is a digital age, right? And I cannot tell you how many times when I was on those dating sites, I was actually doing a research to see how people are able to manipulate each other and how gullible other people are to eat up those lies. And sometimes I was open about it that I was doing the research, sometimes not, because even in the psychological studies of deception, that when I was doing my research, it was so bizarre to me that you have to disclose that you will be lying to people. That beats the purpose, right? Just this crazy open honesty about something can bite you, and you won't be able to do the research on deception, right? For example, I remember one time I was writing a dissertation, in fact, and then I switched the topic. The interesting thing, what happened is that I decided to do the research on perception of deception based on the body language. And I chose a very interesting demographics. I chose the Middle East and how do you perceive the deception? Because I'm from there and I know a lot about it and about the narrative, about the culture, about the behavior there. So I decided to go there and I started investigating that. And that sounded so interesting to me. However, there was a moment when I wanted to do this research with another researcher who was based in Texas at the time. Uh, he was in some women's university, and he had a fantastic research published about lying, how to perceive the deception through the body language, and he used people from Amman, right? Yes, from Jordan. He used people from Jordan, and he published all that research. He published all that. So he was really honest about his findings of his research. But what did it do? What did it do? That caught the attention of the government, our government. And I found out about that much later. But what happened to him that he was approached one time, the first time when he was approached by, we will not gonna name the body, the governing body here. Uh, he was approached and he was asked not to publish this kind of research because that cannot be made public because people will use it and avoid being caught. Of course, which he said, this is a free country, we're not going to do it. And I'm going to continue to publish my research. Okay, when it happened one time, right? But then he gave up publishing his research, the findings, and he was approached a second time.
What were the findings?
The findings are
That,
how
oh,
do people react? And of course, they were from the Middle Eastern descent. How do people react in terms of stress, for example, right? When they're lying, and how to catch them?
and how do you catch them? Correct me, or just are they covered up in this area of the world? Are they of like maybe the women? Are they covered?
Well, women are covered, but at the same time, but not in every country, not in every Middle Eastern country. And if we look at that, of course, like why he was even interested in that particular population is because of the terrorism. And our government decided that there's not going to be a third time. So three times that he refused, and then he just disappeared. He just
Well,
disappeared.
there's terrorists among us here as well, right? I mean,
Yes, but
we
the
just
thing
don't
is
go
that
blowing up other countries, but I mean,
that absolutely is the case, but that was the time when we were fighting the terrorism from that part of the world, and he was publishing those findings. And at the time, while I still did not know that what happened to him, I would conduct my research and I would tell my Middle Eastern friends who were doctors at the time uh, how to get back into the country because they would be from the Middle East and they would always complain to me, my God, we're coming back and we are being held at the border for many hours before letting go and interrogated. And I looked at them and I said that there were two of them and I said that, you know what? Probably your beard wouldn't help here. Why don't you just shave it off? Because you look at those heads, right? You look like you would be a terrorist from that country. Nobody knows who you are here. So probably it would be a better idea not to look like them, although we're talking here about changing your identity here.
Yeah.
But at the same time, one of them, I would ask them, how do you behave? You're probably very nervous, right? Because you're going to come and pass through the border, you're going to be interrogated again. So what do you do? And I gave him an idea. I told him how to behave.
The thing
And
is, I mean, I think you can do that, Dr. Yana, but there's micro expressions whenever you're being when people are being deceptive that you can't you can't that's something that we cannot argue. That's a natural instinctual thing that when we're being deceptive, that if somebody truly is able to decipher deception, like on a basis, like maybe somebody from the CIA or something, there's micro expressions that we give unconsciously when we're lying, that no matter that's implanted in us. I think that what you did probably helped maybe counter some of the deception that somebody, maybe from a perspective discrimination area, like I think where you're coming from is they're being discriminated against based on their appearance.
I'm not talking about discrimination here. I believe that that is a legitimate approach if we want to protect our country. We have to look realistically of what is happening here. We can't just rely uh, on the goodness of humanity. We have to be cautious here from the standpoint of the
Like when you tell
government.
someone to
That is
shave
a
their beard,
legitimate thing. Yeah, because they would look like they would be uh, um,
but that's
terrorists,
a
of course.
bias, right? That's a bias.
While speaking about bias, we're talking about the lies here, of course, and yes, it is a bias, but nevertheless, from the government standpoint, they have to take all the precautions. But with the bias itself, it is absolutely is the case. So while micro expressions would be used at the different settings, because with our human eye we cannot really catch those the change in micro expressions, but on this mundane level, for example, you can advise someone how to behave in order to avoid being caught, right? So I gave certain ways of behavior, and I said, okay, why don't you do this next time you come into the country? You behave this way, and you're going to come back and report to me that you were not caught. So, on the different occasions, both of those doctors, they run to me and say that, well, we were not even held at the border. We were not interrogated for hours this time. That really worked. So, when I was looking up that professor and I wanted to work with him, I learned that he disappeared completely with all of his research. The one that already was published is published. But I decided that that is a very dangerous place to go. So while I was actually supporting those requests and not to publish this research because it can be used by the opposing party, how do we deal with the freedom of speech here, freedom of information, right? But I decided to leave that research alone and keep the findings to myself. And said, all right, I'm just going to go and do something more innocuous so I will not be caught like that or not get myself into any kind of a predicament. But you're absolutely right. Another topic of mine that I was researching at the time, or the perception of deception at the police department based on the fact that people have accents, different accents. And indeed, uh, those who had accents, foreign accents, were perceived as more deceptive as the ones who did not have accents. Well, of course, there's a huge bias, is there? And you're absolutely right about it.
Yeah, that confirmation bias, which is kind of drilled into us based on how we were, I guess, our just the way we're raised, the
Oh, absolutely.
biopsychosocial influences.
Yeah, with all those influences, very interesting. And you mentioned the micro expressions. Of course, there would be at the times when we are taking interviews, when we're able to record the interview, right, the encounter, and then we're able to rewind and see who.
there there's actually people at the airport who, like, at different airports, who are actually specifically hired to pick up on these behaviors of people. They are trained in body language, and they micro expressions can be anything from, like, biting your lip, moving your arm, trying to cover your face. People don't realize, and that's what a micro expression is. It doesn't mean you actually need a
Those are
microscope
the no, but those
to
are the
see
facial
something.
expressions. They're facial expressions, micro expressions. They are so micro that we cannot detect it with our human eye, and that is why we need a video equipment to do that.
Hmm.
That is a separate thing. But yeah, with the facial, what we do with our face, we have to be able to understand that, and that is subconscious. That is the subconscious behavior. So when you talk to somebody, you have to understand that the knowledge of the uh, body language will help you tremendously, and not only in detecting deception, but in your life, for example. And it is such an easy thing to do. But however, here in the West, we're not so observant of human behavior because in different countries, in different European countries, southern countries, for example, even speaking about the Middle East and also the Asian countries, people are observed differently there, and they are perceived as not just somebody who exists on an intellectual level. People are read continuously, and that is actually taught since childhood in those cultures, of course non-verbally, because when you grow up in cultures like that, you already decipher the behavior of other people, and you are able to read them. For example, if you are standing with someone and you're discussing something, right? And you have to look at their feet. What happens with their feet? Are they directly directed at you, or are they sideways? Or one foot, for example, is pointing to the door. That means that the person is not quite interested. The person wants to leave, and they're just being polite by not uh, showing you their disrespect. So we have to be mindful of all those things. And when people lie, what happened to their faces? They touch the faces a lot. They become anxious because as human beings, we are, most of us, not speaking about the psychopaths, we are conscious about it. I mean, like we are not, we like unconsciously. Uh, we're consciously lying, but we're unconsciously touching our face. For Pete's sake,
I was like,
I get caught in a lie of my own mind.
your mind's playing tricks on you.
Mind is playing tricks on me. Exactly, just throwing all those balls. That we touch our nose. We touch our eyes when we do not want to hear a particular statement. We can cover our eyes. We can rub our eyes. It's just because that truth is painful to us. We don't want to be hearing that. We touch the nose, lips. We touch our neck, for example, as a soothing gesture for ourselves when something is bothersome to us. So, by observing this kind of cues, we can save ourselves a lot of trouble.
Hmm.
Right, Dr. Sherry? So next time you sit there, don't touch your face, anything when you talk, right there through the screen.
Well, when it's coming from an unconscious place, you have no control over that, and that's why it becomes easy to pick up on people who are deceiving you. However, you have to. It's something you have to study. You have to learn it, and you have to. It's not something you can just go and next time somebody's lying to you, you're gonna automatically assume because they bit their lip that they were lying to you. It's something. It's not. It's not just something that you just start. It's something I think you should learn. It's a learned, I would say, a learned science. You can pick up on things if you know somebody and their
But it
pattern
is
is
not a
off.
rocket science.
It's not a
It can be
rocket
learned.
science, but it's also not to go out there with the assumption that you, just because somebody touched their face when they were talking to you and you felt they were deceiving you. I think just trust your gut, especially when you're talking to somebody you know. Sometimes the pattern is off. People have patterns, and so do liars. And oftentimes liars have a pattern of webs. webs. That's their pattern. It's just a whole web. And sometimes we get
True.
entangled in that web.
Absolutely, we get entangled in those webs of lies. But then with our loved ones, the people that we know, we have the frame of reference, right? We know their baseline more or less. However, even I was thrown off one time with one particular person when I could not really detect whether he was lying or not, because he was a professional salesman, and it was really difficult for me to really. I had this cognitive dissonance. It's like, how come I know all these cues, and what I hear, what I see, it's actually is not making any sense for me. And then I discovered such a thing as, of course, when we lie, our two sides of our body work differently, right? The two hemispheres of our brain. And that is why when we lie, for example, we can look to the left or to the right. In order to recall a certain situation that happened to you, right? You can look to the right or to the left, depending whether you're right handed or left handed. Uh, in order for us to perceive that you are in fact liars, you're constructing the lie in your mind at this time, right? So the reason why I was throwing off, okay, like I would always look at the people's hand. Are you right-handed? Are you left-handed? And this way I would be able to determine the person is lying or not. However, I did not really take into consideration that people can be ambidextrous. And that is damn difficult to determine when somebody is lying with ambidextrous people. Then you have to look at the pattern of also the speech, what they say, what the facial expressions, and whether that is also coming together with their actions, right? So when a person told me that, oh, I'm ambidextrous, I'm like, my God, I was just sitting here just trying to determine that, doubting myself, and the person was just ambidextrous, meaning that they was able to use both hands uh, at the same
Yeah,
way.
they have now said that it doesn't matter if somebody looks either way, that you can't don't base just looking at somebody's eyes to detect whether they're telling you the truth or not. It's just not, you have to look for other signs as
Of
well.
course, they have
You
to be
know.
taken in a context because it's absolutely easy to say, oh, those newly found detector lies, human detector lie detectors. They would
Yeah.
just say, oh, that you look that way. You just constructed the image in your mind and you're lying. You have to look
Well,
at everything.
and even verbal cues like somebody's tone, are they pausing, are they avoiding certain things, are they speaking differently? A lot of times when somebody is protecting themselves and lying, I find um, the other person who's being lied to, this is something I've experienced. When I was experienced being lied to, especially by a significant other per se, my my impulsivity, or the inability at the time to control my impulsivity, would cause me to react in anger, and that just feeds the person who's lying, because then they try to blame you, which is called blame shifting. So then they blame shift onto you, saying, well, see, I can't tell you anything because every time I tell you something, you blow up at me. Well, you just lied to me. Oh, well, I wasn't lying. And lo and behold, you find out this person is lying. So I've learned that you can never argue with somebody who lies, who believes their own lies, because you'll never get out of that conversation with the truth anyway. But I
Yeah.
think it's learning
Yes.
also how to regulate yourself when you're being lied to, or you feel like you're being deceived. That's a big thing too, because liars who do lying all the time, they blame shift. They will never, a lot of these people won't ever take responsibility because they're so scared, they're so in fear of being found out, of breaking their web apart, of shattering the glass that they think is actually glass, but it's not. It's just whatever we would want to put a word there for. But um you can't argue with a liar, and you just have to learn to regulate your own emotions when dealing with liars.
And understand that the person is lying. Of course, that to regulate your emotions, you have to understand what caused them, right? And once you perceive that the person is lying, and then you have to be able to understand what to do with yourself, whether that's going to be any constructive to accuse the person of lying because people do get defensive. Uh,
Well,
we
it's
can
yeah, and once trust is broken, like they say, it takes a second to it takes a second to break trust and a lifetime to build it back. I
absolutely.
think most of the time it's almost especially after being lied to over and over and trying to trust someone and forgiving, it's really difficult to get back that. I think we've talked about it with the manipulating, the cracked ball and the holes in the fence and the damage that is done from lying is almost it can be almost irreparable.
Absolutely. So, how do we exactly, what tools can we have in order to see if the person is lying or not on an everyday basis? Uh,
Inconsistencies,
Inconsistencies, that's for sure. That's for
broken
sure.
patterns.
Patterns, what if we don't know the person?
Trust your gut.
Oh,
Get to
trust your
know
gut.
your gut.
Sometimes our gut deceives us. I don't even
I
know
don't think the gut
why do
ever
we have
our
the
mind.
feelings in our gut. It all starts in our hearts, right? Like, why
No, it
gut,
starts
for
in
Pete's
the
sake?
stomach because when you're when well, I think they say that because fear, right? Fear when you how when you feel really anxious, does your mind hurt or does your stomach like feel in your heart? Where do you feel when you're anxious and in fear? Do you carry a lot in your mind, or generally it's like in the torso area? Well,
That's
I
why
know you're all out of fear,
because
and you're
we get the pit in the stomach, right? That's what we call it.
right.
So that's
So
very
that's when
interesting.
they say trust your gut.
Trust your gut.
And sometimes the gut, well, that feeling that you're having could just be fear because that's why it's just good to get to know yourself a little bit more, and you can learn to detect things because I think you learn to know that something's not right. Anytime you feel a disturbance, your gut is trying to tell you something's not right. It doesn't mean somebody's lying. I'm not trying to pinpoint anything here, but anytime there's the slightest disturbance, your body or your mind is trying to tell you something.
Yes, but we don't trust ourselves this way. We're not taught to trust ourselves,
Hmm.
right? We also have to be able to intellectually understand, right, what is happening in front of you, and be able to put the facts together. If not, if your intellectual function is gone out of the roof, then listen to your gut.
Like intellectual,
Absolutely.
you mean like critically thinking?
Critically thinking, that's right. When your critical factor is out of the roof. Yeah, I'm not saying that if you're stupid. That's I'm glad that you caught it. Yeah, the critical factor. And the critical factor depends on so many different factors as well, right? So that I believe that the first thing when we look at somebody and we expect the honest answer, one of them would be the understanding that the liars that do embellish their lies with the extensive details. I remember and that when I was teaching, I had a class, and they would always, before I even did this little experiment with them, I would always hear that, that you taught as well, that my grandma died, and the grandma of one student actually died like several times during the semester. It's like, how many grandmas do you have? And in order not to submit the assignment, and other students would just lie at different times of why they did not submit the assignments, or why they cannot do it at a certain time. And I got really tired of it, and I did an experiment. I said, okay, uh, lying to me is not going to produce any positive results for you, because first of all, you are lying, and your moral code is hopefully is hurt at the time, right? And you're going against yourself, you're not being authentic. uh, of course, some people couldn't care less about it, but I did an experiment. I said, I'm tired of all of you coming and presenting all those silly things, hoping that you will just be able to trick me into believing. Do you think that we're just sitting here on the side of grading your papers and we're just dumb? We're not dumb, I said. Let's do the experiment. Try to lie to me right here in classroom. Devise a lie and with the understanding that I will buy it because I already know your baselines. I know your handwriting, all of yours. I know the way you talk, and I can detect the deception through the text that you send me, through the email that you sent me, and especially when you're standing in front of me. So try to do that. They really liked it. And they tried really hard to do that, and they weren't able to do it. And that was probably like the best class in their lives, as they told me, because they did not have to study at the time, right? They didn't have to produce anything. We were just like doing that experiment. But that was an example for them as they were starting their lives. That was the undergraduate class. How it is, how easy is that to perceive that you're lying, because even in the text, even in the email, because I guess what would help me at the time and helps me still now is that I'm also a linguist, and I decode the messages that are being sent to me, the written messages, and I already know what the person is like or not. Sometimes I just have a hunch, of course. I'm not the 100% walking human detector, lie detector, right? But at the same time, we have to equip ourselves with details. And one of them would be that when you ask someone a question that implies yes or no, they will give you this elaborate answer that
They
will
give too much detail.
too much detail. And
That's
that's
yeah, tall
when
tales.
you know it's a
Mhm.
telltale sign. And so many times I saw that, and people believe that they can just get away with that. My friends lied to me that they considered me as their friend or considered themselves my friend, colleagues, and they think that everybody can get away with that. And of course, it is ingrained in our human psyche to lie and deceive for different reasons that we have already discussed,
Yes,
right?
I think if you're suffering from self-pity and you're always seeking outside validation and you're just trying to protect yourself and preserve relationships, it's going to eventually blow up. I think it always reveals itself somehow, somewhere down the road. It always blows up. It's like a volcano, right? Eventually it will erupt. It'll stay dormant for a while, but eventually it's going to erupt. So I think,
Absolutely.
yeah, I think it's unfortunate people who choose to continue to lie all the time. It's just what a miserable existence that must be to reality is really easy. Deception is the hard work. Waking up every day and being grateful for what you have and loving your life is really easy work. It's a gift. But to have to live your life every day in deception, that seems like a living hell.
Well, unfortunately, or fortunately for them, they didn't have a shame factor.
Some people
They
do though, but they because when I think there's different levels of lying, right? I think there are people who lie out of malice, and it's not just to protect a relationship or to try to protect their family or because of their bad behavior. I don't think everyone does lie out of true malicious intent.
Well, right. And we have already discussed that for different reasons we all lie, right? And there are pathological liars, and there are people uh, whose lies will entail dire consequences. But a lot of us on an everyday basis, we just lie because with the kind of innocuous lies, right? And we have discussed already the narcissism, and we discussed the psychopathologies, different psychopathologies. So
They're more
those
Machiavellian liars, right? The
more
ones that more
Machiavellian.
selfish and
That's
perhaps.
right.
Well,
Uh,
we talked about, are we all true? Are we natural born liars, or is it a learned behavior? Do you think once a liar, always a liar?
yes, because once we do something one time, we do it more, two, three, and four times. And I believe that
Do you think it's
because
possible for someone that has always lied to not lie? Do you think
no,
somebody can
it is
become
not
honest?
possible.
You
People
don't think
cannot
so?
come honest. I don't think so.
Okay. Wow. I do
It is
think
not
I do
possible.
believe it's possible.
Well, try. Why don't you try, Dr. Sherry, today? Let's do it for the next 3 days. Just
What do you mean
see
the next 3 days?
for the next 3 days. Take the next 3 days, for example, and see if you can be honest every moment of your day.
I can be honest because if someone asks me if what they're wearing, if it looks good, I'll tell you, yeah, it looks good, or if it doesn't look good on you. You know, I
What
mean,
if
are you talking about white
what
lies? Because I don't engage in
white lies?
pathological compulsive lying.
Well, you don't, well, we're not talking
You're
about
saying
that.
social
Just like
self
social,
deception,
everyday lying.
and so you want me to
Just
take a
see,
tally?
just see if that would be a possibility for you. Even take today till the rest of the day. If you are not going to lie, that would be an absolutely marvelous thing.
What would I
We
have to
all
lie
do.
about?
I don't know. You're going to catch yourself in that. And I will catch myself in that too. Even to the fact that if somebody is going to tell me, oh, do I look fat, for example, right? And the person does look fat, but I'm not going to say that.
Well,
I
there's tactful ways of telling people the truth. That's the difference. You don't have to lie to anybody. You certainly don't have to lie to yourself. You can say, "I don't think that dress looks flattering in you on you." You know, just because somebody else perceives themselves to be ugly or showing up a certain way doesn't mean the other person sees that person that way. But if somebody looks terrible, it's okay to say, "Well, I really don't like that what it looks like on you," and or what are you doing to help yourself not feel fat or to look fat? So there are ways to speak to people to not to minimize yourself to have to say, "Oh no, it really looks good on you." Because again, then you're engaging in protecting that person's feelings. I don't do that. I'm just going to tell you like
true,
it is.
true, true. But I've never heard you telling me the truth with hurting me. And you have the way. Besides, we have this show called Be Honest. And it is not by accident that you and I are doing this show, because by our nature, we're truthful people and we believe in truth, right? And we are truthful people. Knowing the value of truth and how to present it to people. But a lot of the times people don't know it. So, this particular nice approach to tell the truth without lying and correct people constructively and with a compliment, right? For example, even if somebody asks you that, do I look fat? And when you say that, no, but that this dress does not look particularly flattering on you, right?
And
Uh,
most people don't say, "Do I look fat?" They'll say, "I look fat. I am fat." Like a lot of people are not asking for your advice, they're telling you what they are. So in that regard, you don't even have to answer, right? I mean, that's what I've noticed these days. It's
and
like
that
people are like,
silence is going to
"I'm
be the
so
sign
this,
of
I'm so that." It's like, okay, well, there's no room to lie there.
the
They're
silence
showing up
itself.
that way.
True,
My
absolutely.
a long time ago, she said, "You never lie to your kids." So it's like I learned that too, even with my children. It's like I don't tell them things I'm not going to follow through with because they're going to learn that, oh, it doesn't matter what mom tells me. And if there is something that I said I would do, and maybe it's raining, it's cold, or we're not feeling well, I'll say, "I'm sorry. I know I told you we were going to do this, but mom doesn't feel well, or it's raining outside, we can't do it. But why don't we do this or that?" So even as small as like children, lying is not a comfort ever. Lying is not a comfort for the person lying. Lying doesn't release dopamine. It's the notion of the reward behind it that triggers the neurotransmitters or the neuroactivity, right? It's not like you get this dose of dopamine from lying. It's the
I
anticipation.
believe that there is probably could be when people lie and when they get happy, when once they get away with a lie. And there are a lot of pathological liars who are happy. They get elated. They feel elated after they learn that they got away with that lie. So I believe that there's a boost of dopamine at the time,
Dopamine doesn't release it. It's the actual process.
the
Lying doesn't
process.
release dopamine. It triggers the neural chemicals that make us anticipate, like getting caught, not getting caught. It's the reward because we know dopamine is the basis of reward, right? Motivation and reward. So
Yes.
we're not motivated to lie per se, but it's the act of lying that triggers neural chemicals, which usually produce adrenaline, norepinephrine, cortisol, those types of things. And like you say, when you get away with it and it comes down, you've gotten the reward. So then the dopamine is a bit triggered there. So that's why it can become repetitive and kind of addictive for people.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Same thing with being in relationships. Like when you're imagine being regardless of where you're at work, I believe relationships are all encompassing. It's with people, your parents, your family, your significant other, intimacy, work. Relationships are broad. Imagine staying somewhere where you're sick of being there. You're self deceiving yourself, right? Instead of, I understand you're not just going to get up and quit your job because we have responsibilities and so much, so on and so forth. However, when we stay for a long time in a place, we're lying to ourselves. We're not happy. We don't want to be there, but we're not doing any other footwork to do anything around us to change. So again, we're like deceiving ourselves. I mean, I kind of went on a different road just now, I think.
Yeah, you are
From
so
pathological to self-deception,
yeah,
it's all
uh,
a lie.
you are so passionate about self-lies. Of course, that is a huge concern. And not only be able to detect the lies of the people in front of you, but also
Because I
to
lied
detect
to myself for too many years.
your own lies. So not only probably just to go through the day of trying not to lie to people, but also why don't we just take a day off and see how many times we lie to ourselves? So that would be an interesting experiment
Hmm.
because with ourselves, we don't really notice that. It's with other people when they're in front of us. They appear anxious while talking, right? And that could be the sign of deception, right? But those are not the signs in you. You have this anxiety inside of yourself that would probably could indicate that something is wrong, that you're lying to yourself, but then you don't really see that. Would be funny if you could just go and look into the mirror and say that, oh, do I look anxious when I think that thought, right? But that's another way how to see if people are lying, and also to get to see their pattern of speaking, because they would be distancing themselves from what they are talking about. For example, if we see uh, our president, who Clinton, for example, who one time was given a statement and he said, "I did not have sex with that woman." Well, first, finger pointing like that is also the sign when you raise a finger.
Sexual
Uh,
relations.
yeah, sexual relations, right? Or how did he say that? I never had sex with that woman.
I think he said, I
And
did not have sexual relations with that woman.
oh, okay, sexual relations with that woman, right? Well, first, he called probably sex, that would be sexual relations, right? It's already distancing yourself from the fact. And also, he did not call her by name. He said, that woman. It's already, again, distancing yourself from that. The person is lying. And if we look at that, of course, that happens subconsciously. If we look at that, if we know the certain amount of cues, we are going to be equipped, we are going to understand more what happens around us and not gullibly believe, right? And like you mentioned, that people get defensive when confronted with a lie, right? Look at that when people will uh, start screaming at you or blaming you for lying and projecting the lie on you, making you feel uh,
Blame shifting. Hmm.
blame shifting, exactly, but making you feel bad for even questioning the person, and that becomes a pattern.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, let's a little bit of truth right now. We're coming live from United Public Radio 107.7 out of New Orleans, Louisiana. There's some truth to add to the show. Sprinkle it on in.
Sprinkle, exactly. So, what else can we say about lying? Lying, how do we detect it? When people are constantly changing their story, beware when you heard one story being told one time and the second time the person tells it, oh, that's embellished with different details. Uh, just take a note. People can be just gregarious people, for example, and they love embellishing their stories or anything that happens in their life, right? Exaggerating. There are people like that.
Blindsiding comes to mind when we blindside people.
Elaborate on that, Dr. Sherry.
Deceiving someone by catching them like completely off guard, taking advantage of somebody's vulnerability and their trust. We're blindsiding them, um, often with unexpected information, kind of like what you're talking about. That's what reminded me of that. Like you're blindsiding someone.
Right, that's exactly is the case. Yeah, one of the techniques of interrogation that has been used at the police is asking the person to tell the story, and then ask the person to tell the story backwards, with details and times when the person did it. And a lot of the times that the person who is lying will not be able to repeat this lie backwards because he won't be able to construct this kind of chain of events backwards because he would have to remember what he lied in the first place. So that is difficult, people. You have to be able to tell your lies, to remember your lies, and that is a difficult life. So you, Dr. Sherry, you're absolutely right. It's a difficult life.
Well, it's harder because you have to try to remember all these things, and then people won't remember them. Generally, they don't. They slip up. But the thing that they'll do is they'll be like, "I didn't say that. I never did that." They start to gaslight. So that then it just becomes from blindsiding to blame shifting to gaslighting. It just becomes this anything they can do to wiggle out of wherever they are. And eventually, oftentimes, that little wiggle worm gets caught because all it is a little worm, right? It's gone about.
That's true, but there are psychological disorders where people would be lying. That would be the part of their psychological disorder. For example, the narcissistic personality disorder. We all know that, right? But there is another one. It would be a symptom of a borderline personality disorder when people would have adopt different identities, and
Like
of course,
disassociative identity disorder.
no, that is a borderline personality disorder. That is, of course, very similar to dissociative identity disorder. Uh, and of course, this is not the topic of the similarities,
What you
but
talking about, like a chameleon-like complex?
no, I'm talking about the borderline personality disorder. And okay, chameleon complex is also, of course, plays a factor here. Um,
What do you mean, like adopting false identities? I'm like for with the borderline. Is that what you're saying? I'm just
with
trying
a
to understand what you mean by that.
Yes, in a
Okay,
borderline
gotcha.
personality disorder, people do adopt different personalities, and something very similar to dissociative identity disorder, because borderline personality disorder is also exhibiting the signs of the people exhibit signs of dissociation. And once they wake up in the morning and they have a different identity, for example, today I'm going to be this, they dissociate with their self that they had, for example, yesterday, a few minutes ago. They adopt this new personalities. And of course, with that goes a lot of lying, and not only with the dissociations that they have, but people with borderline tend to lie more, especially the avert borderlines. Uh, with covert, the situation is different here when their anger is a destructive tendencies are directed inwards more at themselves than at other people. So there are also lies associated with the Munchausen syndrome, and that would be a lot with the self-deception that we're going to go to for a second, back to that. When people lie, pretend to be sick all the time,
Oh,
right? Or
Munchausen. Oh, okay, got you. Uh-huh. Yes.
yeah. What is the word? Munchausen?
I think it's Munchausen, and there's also by proxy, right? When they use another person or specifically their children.
Oh yes, that's I believe that that is a German name, so that's why I pronounce it as Munchausen. Yeah,
It's okay.
yeah, and that's how that's what it is. But yeah, they persuade even their children of being sick so they could be taking care of them.
Yeah, that's like
Yeah.
that case. I think it was I think they were from Louisiana. The young woman who recently got released from prison. Something Rose. Can't remember her first name. It's spacing me, but her and her boyfriend plotted and they killed the mother after her mother had made her pretend. Well, she thought she was ill for all those years, losing her teeth, being in a wheelchair.
Oh my God.
What is her
Yeah.
name? It was in the news. I think they even had a either a show on it or a movie. It's
And that is so destructive.
Gypsy Rose. There we go.
Gypsy Rose, that was her name.
Yeah.
Gypsy Rose.
Yeah, and that was a big case of that. Like her mom would always feign the symptoms. Yeah,
And that's
that's
psychological
profound.
pathologies on their own, right? For the parents who do that, perhaps because they are afraid to stay alone. So that is why they make the children stay with
They,
them for the rest of
they
their
also do it
lives.
for attention because they're getting attention from people. People are they're getting notoriety in some shape or form because their child may have cancer or
Right.
it's sad.
Hmm.
It's a sad sickness. And
Absolutely. Yeah. So, what do we do with people? What shall we do, or what shall we not do when we see that people are lying to us? Well, I believe that one of them would be not to expect them to admit a lie, because who wants to admit a lie? You catch me in a lie, so, oh yeah, Dr. Sherry, I lied to you. Nobody wants to admit that they're lying, right? So even if you can prove that they're lying,
well,
sometimes, of course,
oftentimes you do get the proof. The proof will come out, and when you do have it, sometimes then the liar will have another story as to why they couldn't tell you the truth. So,
exactly,
and, you know, you can't argue with someone who believes their own lies. It's a you're never going to get anywhere, but besides having another tail, probably another piece of the web that stayed intact. You know, there's always a piece of that web that just stays there that it never really burns up. That's why a lot of people, no matter what, um, you can be in somebody's web, and years from now, they will come back into your life. The web is always there. It's a matter of like, okay, I see the spider and I see the web. I'm not going in that direction. You know, I used to go into it like this, you know, and now I'm like,
face
no,
down, phew.
right? Diving straight into the web.
Straight into the web.
You
Yeah,
know, but I was deluding myself. I was lying to myself, and like they say, like Plato goes on to say, the of all deceptions is self-deception. Because when we're lying to ourselves,
the
it's
worst.
you don't have to be lying to somebody else. You're just you are. I mean, it can't get any worse than that when you're lying to yourself, right? I mean,
Absolutely. Yeah. And when people lie to you, don't take it personally. A
no,
lot of
it's
the
because of
times
it's
that
yeah. That's a great point. It's their own crap.
exactly, it's a reflection of who they are, has nothing to do with you a lot of the times. So we just have to remember the behavior that their behavior is not about you, because pathological liars, they are unable to control their lying, because due to the
Yeah, it's
underlying
habitual.
mental behavior. Absolutely, they are not able to stop lying.
No,
And we will never believe that, right? Like we would never think that someone in front of us can be lying from morning till night, all the time constructing different stories. And unless you met a pathological liar, you will not even consider that.
yeah, and I think as we grow older, I think we can pretty much start to pinpoint pathological liars. Even when you get to know somebody, compulsive liars, it's because of the urge. What is a white lie, right? Based on what? Usually to avoid conflict. It's a based on a feeling, a spur of the moment feeling. A white lie
Yeah,
to
exactly.
protect. Hmm.
Yeah, and also don't lose your temper. And then you mentioned something about it, to lose your temper, then you become angry, and then they blame you for that, for becoming angry, right? Because uh,
Anything to deflect from their own deceit. It's a deception, you know. Anything to deflect.
exactly. And that will cause and trigger a different lie and lie on top of the lie. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that we believe in the society that averting the eye gaze is a sign of deception. Not necessarily. A lot of the times when people lie to you, they look you straight in the eye and
Hmm.
they do not even blink. I studied that for a long time. That is a very interesting detail about human behavior, that they can look into your eye and they don't blink.
Hmm.
That you have to be able to understand, that when we habitually talking with each other, right? We're looking here and there and everywhere, and we're at ease. But when you find someone looking you straight in the eye, oh, you have to know that person too, right? Because there could be other psychopathologists when people stare you in the eye that don't blink, right? So that could also be a sign of lying. And I remember even with my kids, uh, when they would just look me straight in the eye and tell me a lie, right, without blinking. And I would say, "Did you just tell me the lie?" No, la la la. And then was like, "Yeah, I did. That they can't lie to me. While it is okay for children to learn how to behave in a society at home, that you have to be able to defend yourself. You have to learn how to live in a society, and that does not include telling truth all the time. Sometimes you just have to keep it to yourself. You have to be um, understanding that people lie all the time. You have to be able to understand how and when and what to do about it, right? So not losing temper. Oh, you lied to me. That no. Take a
Hmm.
note of that. Take a note of that, and determine your course of action.
Yeah, we can't change anybody else. We can only do work on ourselves. We can't change anybody else. You can't stop anybody else from lying. You can't put word. Look at somebody's actions. People, liars will always try to convince you with their words. Words are nil and void. Actions will always speak louder every time, especially when you know somebody. They'll always try to give you a long line of a tablet of things that will change, and this is what I'm going to do. If somebody is not, you can speak of ambition, but if you don't put it into action, you're just really not ambitious in that regard. And it's, I mean, so actions, 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 actions. Take it with yourself first. First and foremost, learn to be honest with yourself. Be honest with the world around you. I think it's a beautiful freedom that you have. It's a, I don't know, connected to the gratefulness of the gratitude of spirituality. Don't want to go into spirituality here, but it's just, if you're able to be honest with yourself. I mean, when you start to encounter people who are lying, you know who to bring to your table, and not to to let go from your life. I think that's how you deal with liars. You learn to who to let in close and who to let go. There are people that are really close to us that are going to lie to us. People that we have no choice but to be in their lives because we have children or their family or things like that. So those things are just always going to be like a navigation bridge. It's going to ebb and flow, and you just have to learn to, I believe, learn to control, like to navigate your own emotions and learn how to deal with it. Less dialogue, more action.
Exactly, to be responsible for yourself and for not for other people's actions, because when they lie, let them be responsible for that. You can hold them accountable, of course, when you're in a relationship with someone. You shouldn't just understand that they're lying and not doing anything about it, because when you're in the relationship, take a note also, because when people say something, they can actually show you, follow it up with some actions that will make you believe that they're truthful. However, not only believe the actions of people, believe the patterns,
Those are
because
actions.
people can do an action like one time. For example, a guy who says that I love you, you're the love of my life, and he would just tell you that you're the best thing that ever happened to me, right? And we'll start bringing you flowers, right? And say that, oh, let's go on a vacation.
Meanwhile, he has a whole family.
Meanwhile, as a whole family, it could definitely be so. And then you will see that, okay, well, he gave me flowers, right? Oh, we went to a mini vacation here, for example. But then whatever he says does not, he doesn't follow through, because he forgets his lies. He forgets those promises that he gave you. And the actions will be so selective uh, when the pattern of those actions will not follow suit. The person who is truthful to you, yeah, we all sometimes can forget what we promised, right? And it is good in a healthy relationship to remind to each other, oh, listen, you told me that. Oh, yes, I absolutely forgot. Let's do it. However, in the relationship with people who lie, this is not the case. You will see that the pattern is not
Can be inconsistent.
exactly, it is very inconsistent with what they say. And even like I always say that I've learned to believe this, to take it as a motto for my life, that you can tell me anything you want, right? I don't believe your words. I don't even
Mm-hmm.
believe your actions because people can do it once or twice and then become so inconsistent after that. But I always believe patterns. Patterns never lie to me. So if we can learn something in this life, always look at the patterns.
Mm-hmm.
Patterns, they will represent the psychology of the person to you and your own patterns. Of course, don't forget about yourself, right? We can continuously blame other people for something that we don't take care of in our lives, right?
Yeah, you just have to learn to be consistent. If you want people to, if you want to be a dependable person and a reliable person, and for people to feel the same about you, you have to learn to be consistent. And at times, we're all going to have shortcomings. We just have to learn to reach out and talk about what if something's bothering us. Reach out and say, "Hey, I know I was going to do this with you, and I know it may be I just don't feel well." Just be honest with where you are, and just that's a consistency. Just I think remain consistent. I think people who live a life of deceit all of their lives, I think as they get older, I would say they will likely grow old and lonely. And I don't, that's just, even if you have children, if you're just always a dishonest person and like just living a miserable life of deceit, I think that when you grow old, I think you'll just be a lonely, miserable person. And that's just, for me, that's just not the kind of life I want to live. And it seems daunting. It's just,
That's
and
what happens to the people with narcissistic personality disorder, pathological narcissists, right? That's
because
what happens
eventually
to them.
people all around they just know who you are.
Yeah,
So,
they end up life lonely. Of course,
and
they have to
unhappy.
lonely and unhappy, but we never think about that, what's going to happen later in our lives, right? We never think of that. Who wants to think of that? Oh, one day I'm going to be 80 years old. All right, why go that far? One day I'm going to be 60 years old. If I continue to behave this way, right? Then I will be lonely. I will be left alone without anybody, right? I remember that I had a person lie to me on a regular basis and be so inconsistent with the promises and the things. And I was much younger. And I said, you know what? The day is going to come when you're old and there will be nobody next to you, not your children, not your wife, nobody. Everyone is going to leave you. Your friends, your colleagues are not going to be there. It's going to be just you and your lies that you uh, told your entire life.
Hmm.
That person
you,
had this
you'll be facing that reality
huge
that you
eyes
created.
like that, like opened up. And, like probably for the first time, somebody ever was able to confront them and just say, to tell them the truth. Because when that happens, we just like walk away. We don't want to be dealing with negative consequences, right? And I was able to say that. To my surprise, it changed the person's behavior to probably slightly it did change, but like you said, like we discussed it here, that the once you're a liar, you're always a liar,
I
unless
don't believe that though. But
well,
that's
unless there is a huge spiritual change and transformation in you, and that happens with the spiritual experiences that the at the church when something happens to you, right? But unless you are at the bottom, face down, right at the end of your rope, and you see that, listen, like you talk to yourself that this has brought me to this terrible end and the situation is my life as I am now. And then it is possible to change. But other than that, not any amount of medicine, any type of medicine is going to make you stop lying. But only at the time when there's no other way to live and you don't want to continue living this way, then yes, it is possible. Why not?
yeah. Definitely think there's. I think every just about anything is possible. So I don't think all once a liar always a liar. I do think that whatever it takes you to get there, it's going to take you to get there. You just have to be willing and go through enough pain. Some people don't feel it though. There's a lot of liars out there who may never change because it doesn't affect them because they just move on to the next host. You know. So, but some people are affected by it. It's
When
the deception is destructive. That's just a the thing to take away from today. It's destructive.
it is very destructive, absolutely. And if we can take anything out of today's conversation, is just to stay truthful. If you, as Jordan Peterson says, that if you are not able to lie, to stop lying, uh, no, how do you say that? In your life, he said, live your life, or at least attempt not to tell a lie, right? Not to tell a lie. And let's see if it is possible that we can do. I'm going to do that experiment with myself, for example, even with white lies, with anything. I'm going to see if I'm going to be lying to myself, and how many times a day I'm going to lie to myself. I'm going to do this experiment today because it's uh, 1:30 in the afternoon for me, and I still have the rest of the day to even observe my actions. So I'm going to start with myself. Yeah,
Yeah, I think it gets if you practice long enough, I believe if you practice being honest long enough, I don't think you even have to experiment. You just know that you're not lying. You
but
don't
that
have
has to become a habit. A habit is the most difficult thing to form.
mhm.
Takes about 21 days of consistency,
And
right?
learning how to say something to somebody. You don't have to be mean. You can be blunt. I think that's what a lot of people have always said. You're just very blunt, Sherry. It must be from where I'm from the South. They say I'm very blunt person. But I think the blunt is also misconstrued with honesty in certain regards, right? It's just say it like it is. But I've learned to have tact over the years because there are probably times I didn't have that.
Yes, that's the thing, to tell people the truth, but do it tactfully.
Yes, you don't
Because a
need to
lot of the times
sugarcoat
that
it.
mhm, it can be destructive. Yeah, people blame me for that as well. But then you have to be able to say it in a such a way that the person would be willing to change, right? Or willing to understand the situation that they're in. And that's the most important thing, because if we tell the truth, oh, yes, you know what, that, yeah, you are fat. The person, doesn't matter how fat the person is, going to turn around and lash out at you. Doesn't matter. So we have to be able to use tact when this happens. I absolutely
Yes.
agree with you.
Be
Yeah,
honest, be nice.
be honest, but most of
Don't
all,
sugarcoat, but give them a little spice.
exactly, be honest, and try not to offend people with their lies, with your honesty, because we all people with our own convictions and things that we believe in. And if we try to dismantle a person's belief, even something like you said, he's truthfully believing about himself, and truthfully believing the person is telling the truth, right? People can do that, and then they will
And learning
become
just to
defensive.
stop taking things personally in life. If you come to somebody and say, I'm fat, and you know you're fat, and the person says, yes, I agree with you, you're fat, and you get offended by it, then you have to also don't take things personally. That's a difficult road as well. That's one of the most difficult, I think. Other than being honest, learning to not take things personally is a whole nother endeavor in life. All of these are ongoing processes throughout the life cycle. We're taking
Right.
that to doom.
Yes, we should
Mhm.
take it not personally, but transpersonally, as a friend of mine says. So
Yes,
that
it's
is
true. We take so much personal that we just get so irritable sometimes, and it's funny. Life is what life is but a dream, right?
true, true. Well, we discussed today what happens in the mind of a liar. It is a complex terrain shaped by a myriad of motivations, cognitive processes, and emotional intricacies. From self preservation to manipulation, like we discussed today, lying serves various purposes rooted in our ego, fear, and social dynamics. So, understanding the psychological mechanism underlying offers insight into its complexities and consequences, illuminating the intricate interplay between cognition, emotion, and behavior. So ultimately, unraveling the mysteries of the mind of a liar enables us to navigate the ethical dilemmas of deception, and cultivate a relationship built on trust, authenticity, and integrity.
That's
Well,
right. So if you find yourself lying today, make sure you're lying on your back going to sleep or lying looking at the sky.
that's
All with
right.
your
That's
legs in.
exactly is the case. Yes. So, Dr. Sherry, what are we going to talk to about next time?
Oh, we're going to be dwelling in darkness. We're going to talk about the mind of a killer.
Oi. Oi, mic drop, mic drop. The mind of the killer. So, ladies and gentlemen, come and join us next week on Friday, where when we will be talking what happens inside the mind of a killer. Whether that is a light topic or not, how are we going to approach it? I don't know. But we have to be honest. We have to be honest. And Dr. Shira and I will honestly discuss that and bring to you the understanding of the whole phenomenon. We are thanking you today for being with us. You have been with us on a live on United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM from beautiful New Orleans. And you've been listening to the show Be Honest with fabulous Dr. Sherry and not less fabulous Dr. Yana. Of what? Am I being honest here? I'm not less fabulous, right?
That's right.
Oh, that is so funny. We have to be able to use humor here. Otherwise, this life is so difficult, with so many intricacies. We have to be able to use humor to
Oh,
our
laughter
advantage.
feeds the soul.
Yes. So thank you, everyone. We are waiting for you next Friday. And please remember to submit your stories through our website and write to our email address. So we are looking forward to meeting with you next Friday. Have
Okay.
the happy rest of your day. Bye.